Next up, Jordy from StellaService.
Okay. Hello. My name is Jordy Leiser. I'm the co-founder and CEO of StellaService. I'm joined by my colleague Dave Miller, who's the head of our data operations. And I'm actually really excited to go after Josh because we're going to do something very similar to Josh, but sort of opposite, where we'll talk about our business. We'll tell you what we do and how we do it. And we'll also talk about building a data company and the complications and the challenges of building a data company, but in a totally different way, because I think we're a unique beast in this world of big data, and that we're not really big data. It's sort of a big secret, is that we actually make our own data. And pretty much every other data company that I think is presenting today, and that you pretty much ever hear about in the big data world, takes data from other places, picks up crumbs, and puts it together in a very meaningful, understandable way, and delivers insight and value and things like that. So we actually don't do that at all. We just make our own data, and then we deliver it as well. So we do the whole thing. Okay. So we are a New York City-based startup. We measure and rate the customer service of online businesses, specifically online retailers. And it was funny hearing, again, Josh mention about the ratings part. I actually went through that exact same process, and it turned out that people did care, but only after a very long time of going through the process. So, but we do, in fact, rate companies. We collect data to help consumers make smarter decisions about where to buy things online. If you think about TVs, jackets, backpacks, shoes, cameras, whatever, you can pretty much buy the same thing on a number of different sites around the web for basically the same price. This year, during the holidays, price matching was the rage, and so every major business basically was able to sell a similar item at the same price. So why else do you choose company A versus company B? Well, that's where we come in and we help you make a decision because it's all about the experience. So we also use that data to help retailers improve the experience for their customers, and we'll get into what that data is and how we do that. We're about 40 employees here in New York and have a bunch more around the country that help us collect our data. We raised about $22 million in funding from VCs, and our clients on the retailer side who pay us to license our data include many of the largest retailers in the world. Okay, so I'll chat about the retailers in a second, but for consumers, and actually, and I think there was a way to do one of these guys. Let's see. Whoops, not that one. How do I do this, Matt? There we go. Okay. So today on Google, if you were to type in a search for Nike shoes, see something that looks like this, pretty typical, right? Folks have seen this all the time. And you see these star ratings next to a retailer's brand. And if you click on the source of those star ratings, you'll actually get to a page that is branded StellaService with their rating. So we are now integrated into Google and other search engines and shopping marketplaces with real live data about what it's like to buy from Finish Line or from Zappos. So in this example, you can see that Zappos is rated elite by StellaService. Some of their shipping stats, some of their returns and refund stats, and some of their customer service stats. So we're going to tell you that on average, Zappos takes between 3 and 6 hours to respond to customer emails. This data is available nowhere else in the world, and we have it for pretty much every major retailer. The traditional status quo until Stella came around was reviews from people like JoJo. So we thought we could do better than JoJo, and who knows who JoJo is, but that's what people used before us. Okay, so in addition to integrations with consumers, go back. Okay, we pass along this data to brands and retailers to help them understand not only objective performance of their own businesses, but also the exact data metrics and performance metrics of their competitors. So in this example, we'll look at something like speed of email response, for example. So if you select Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, and Kohl's, which are obviously brands everyone in this room knows, for this time period that was selected, the average time to respond to an email for all of those companies was 7 hours, 54 minutes for Sears, and so on down the line. And Kohl's in this particular example, 54 hours on average. But that 54 hours on average is actually only, if you look at on the far right, sample size, only 5 customer service emails account for that sample, which you think is probably small, which you're right. And the reason it's only 5 is because we have a cutoff at 3 days, and if you don't respond to an email in 3 days, we actually toss it out and we don't even count it, because which one of us has ever emailed a company and they don't respond to us in 3 days and we actually still want to do business with that company? So this is an example of, again, we'll walk through exactly what we do to collect our data and how we do this, but this is unprecedented data. This is information that none of these brands or retailers have ever had access to in the world before. And one of the biggest initiatives for brands and retailers today, and really any company, is if you sit in the boardroom or you hear people talk about what's discussed in terms of initiatives, you always hear people talk about wanting to be best in class. And everybody from the CEO on down to most major brands and companies, they say, well, we need to be best in class in something. And the reality is, nobody knows what best in class actually is, except for the people who work with StellaService. So this is what best in class is. So LL Bean responds to emails in 51 minutes for this particular time period that we looked at. So compare 51 minutes to 7 hours, 17 hours, 54 hours plus, could be days. It's kind of unbelievable to think that people have been making decisions about improvement across any part of their business, whether it's how quickly to get products to customers' houses, how quickly to answer emails, how responsive they should be on social media. People have been investing in these kinds of experiences for their customers without having a single bit of knowledge about what their customers are experiencing at other companies. And so you sit in a meeting and somebody says, hey, I'd like to propose that next year, or this year in 2014, I really think we should improve our ability to get back to customers from 6 hours to 3 hours. I think improving it by 3 hours would make a huge difference. And that's going to cost us, across the whole business, going to cost us $3 million. And everyone looks around and like, yes, banging on the table, like that's a great idea. And little do they know that their direct competitor, LL Bean, is responding in 51 minutes. And the fact that you just made that decision means that potentially you didn't move the needle at all, not even a little bit, to go from 6 hours to 3 hours. So without having this kind of information, people are making decisions without full information because they've never had the information. Of course, why would you have operating metrics on your competitors? No one's ever had that before. So we give them the ability to make that decision with much more confidence and precision and make those choices. One of the other examples I always like to use when we talk with brands and retailers is when an alien lands on Earth, at some point this will happen, that alien will walk into a store, probably Nordstrom, because they're going to land somewhere in Seattle or whatever, and the alien is going to walk around, do their shopping in Nordstrom, and walk out of that experience at Nordstrom and have absolutely no clue whatsoever if that was a good experience or a bad experience. It is what it is. It just was. And the only reason any of us leave a experience at Nordstrom or Virgin America or Zappos or LL Bean and decide that that was a great customer experience or that we really enjoyed doing business with that company is because we're comparing it to something else that we've also experienced in our life. And so if you think about from a customer standpoint or from an operator standpoint, if you're running one of these companies, to make decisions about what's good and what's not good is all relative. Everything about customer service is relative. And so without relative information and relative insight, you can't make decisions. So in addition, just quickly before I hand it off to Dave to talk about the challenges with the data collection, we also take photos of every single package that we order. So we're out there measuring all these companies every day, and we literally have photos of what the out-of-box experience is like, what the packaging's like, if it's damaged, if it comes with too much paper in it, if the package is in some way unpresentable to the customer. And this is, again, data that no one's ever had before in the retail space or in any other category. Okay, so I'll hand it off to Dave.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordy. So as Jordy mentioned, I think something that's rather unique about excuse me, what we do is this manufacturing component of our data set. So what that means, what does that mean that we manufacture the data? That means that we control every interaction that we have with a merchant, both in basically these two houses, customer support and fulfillment. So when we're calling a company, the question being posed to that company on that particular day is generated by StellaService. The data that we're going to extract from that interaction, let's say how quickly did they answer the phone, how professional was that CSR on the phone, that's all data that we write, it's the data that we collect, and we can augment that based on client feedback and what's the most valuable. So it takes a lot of work to build the system that lets us collect that data, and it takes a lot of trial and error, and I think kind of in the vein of what not to do. We've learned through trial and error on kind of best practices for collecting this data. So a good example is, if I'm going to call Zappos every day for the month of January, I certainly can't call them on my cell phone 30 days in a row. Day 10, they're like, the last 9 days, you've asked a question, is there something that we're doing wrong? Or suspicions will be raised around why am I calling, why am I emailing these companies every day? So anonymity is a big piece of our process. And that means that we have to constantly rotate phone numbers. We can never use the same phone number twice with the company. We can never use the same email twice. So there's complexity around designing a system that lets us do that and lets us scale efficiently. So in these two groups of the data, really the two main themes, if you think about customer service, are speed and quality. And we've worked with some folks to help us think through what type of data we're collecting. We have an auditing process to make sure that we're doing what we're saying we're doing, because that's always important to do. And have some folks that we've teamed up with at HBS that have helped us think through statistical significance and sample size, which I'll let Jordy talk on a little bit. But like I said, speed and quality. So those are really, if you think about customer service, your experience, everyone's had a customer service experience here. Everything's going to boil down into those two axes. How quickly do I get a response, and is it any good? So on the contact center side, we're going to measure stuff that seems pretty straightforward. Time to live agent. How quickly am I getting to someone on the phone? How quickly am I waiting in that chat queue where that automatic message comes up and says, hey, I'm Tim, I'll be right there, and then they don't show up for 10 minutes. So we're going to measure that 10-minute interaction, and then we're going to measure when you pose your question, the CSR doesn't come back for another 5 minutes, right? We're going to measure how accurate, how professional they are, but how the quality of the answer. So if I'm going to ask a question about a tent to an REI rep, I want to know what they're telling me. Is it accurate? Is it complete information? Can I get away with leaving that interaction, my issues resolved? So issue resolution is another piece as well. And then we do that as well on the fulfillment side. So if we're calling a company every day, we're also ordering products every month across the country. And those folks have to be anonymous as well, because we don't want a fulfillment center to say, hey, Susie from Salt Lake has ordered 36 times over the last 12 months, and every single package has gone back. Some of these guys that were before us, they'd probably throw up a red flag and say, stop fulfilling Susie's orders because we're losing a ton of money. So we have to rotate those shoppers. We have to rotate their assignments. We have to make sure that the data that we're collecting is anonymous and therefore objective. Because if we're not delivering objective data to the client, then they're not able to make decisions and take action, as we've heard tonight, on insights. So it's funny, these shoppers are, like I said, across the country, and they're processing multiple orders per week, per month, taking those photos as you saw earlier. And I think they have, most of their UPS delivery guys are probably pretty suspicious about what they're doing. It's probably a house mom that's running a cocaine dealing operation. She's hiding cocaine in these packages and shipping. I don't know what they're thinking, but
they get lots of pastries.
Yeah, they get lots of pastries.
The
UPS drivers are bribed to show up on time every day. So, but anyway, the same quality and speed axes can be applied to fulfillment, right? How quickly does the package get there? Is it the right product? What kind of condition is the package in? And again, as Jordy alluded to, this is data that we own, so we create it, and thus we can deliver it to LL Bean. We can also deliver it to Eddie Bauer. So data that they haven't quite seen yet. until this product was available. And just to give you a perspective, these numbers are not nearly the scale that when you think big data, this would hold water to. But we are placing thousands upon thousands of calls each year to these retailers, sending thousands of emails. Each of those interactions is being measured through the same process. Analysts are trained exactly the same way, so we have a consistent data set. So rather than put our arms around a ginormous data set and try to figure out, okay, if we stretch it this way and that way, I think we've found a trend. We're building a trend each day. And so we know that data is going to be actionable day over day for clients. That also means we wait on hold forever. Cumulatively, just around 50 days. So overall, that means it's not one person sitting there 50 days, obviously, but it's a lot of time because it takes us a lot of time to get to the person on the phone. As we all know, if you call Time Warner, which we don't call, thankfully, but if you call Dell, they're going to put you on hold for quite a while. They don't want you to actually talk to a person. So that, in aggregate, adds up to quite a bit of time listening to hold music. And then we order a ton of products. We get almost 12,000 products are shipped around the country to our shoppers' homes, and all of them get sent back. We're going to measure that full cycle of, okay, the product arrives, now how easy is it for me to send it back?
Today I was actually out with a retailer who literally tried to give me a bill for all the products that we've ordered and returned and all the phone calls and emails that we have placed to that company.
Right.
I told him I'd add it on top of his invoice.
Yeah, exactly. That's the right answer. And so, almost 3,000 free deliveries, another feature that we're measuring constantly. So, it's been since inception, it's been a really valuable learning experience for us to be able to test how this process works. We've been able to interact with our clients from the beginning to say what matters to them. And I would say just in the theme of the night, from big data and collecting data, we've been able to, I think, iterate and learn from our mistakes and say, okay, if we're going to build a data set that's valuable over time and actionable over time, there's going to be some challenges that we're going to have to face. Anonymity and objectivity are things we're thinking of every day. Because if we don't deliver valuable data to our clients, the first person that's going to tell us it's not valuable is the client. We put a phone call recording into our product. The first person that listens to that phone call recording is the client, and they'll be the first one to say, I don't agree with you when you measured it that way. So, quality and consistency are the number one and two things we're always paying attention to. So, anything?
One more thing I'd just like to add is because we created the data set, ourselves, and we manufacture it and change it depending on the changes in methodology, depending on the changes of consumer expectations and consumer preferences. The biggest challenge for us at the beginning was what to measure at all. Right? Because at the end of the day, people who are using big data to take insights and learnings and send that back, they're limited by what data is out there in the world or in the ether if they're picking up the crumbs of Twitter fumes or whatever they're doing. Whereas for us, it was like, what the hell should we measure to begin with? Like, what is the data that matters? And so the way that we solved that problem was to literally just go talk to the businesses. So every time we enter a new vertical, every time we enter a new category, we literally just go and sit with a company and say, hey, what are the business metrics that matter to you? What would be amazing metrics to have of your competitors? What do you wish you could compare apples to apples? And then we use that as the framework and it sort of de-risk the solution and de-risk the data business from there.
It's kind of, hopefully we're going the right direction on Josh's side. I think we were. Ask them and then dig the data, right? Not the other way. So,
yeah. Okay, that is all. Take questions. Thank you.
So time for one or two quick ones.
Hello, my name is Mr. Dunks. I am a student at NYU. I have a question about, you've been doing this for how long now?
A little over 3 years.
3 years. And in that time, have you noticed whether, in your data or just kind of anecdotally, any kind of measurement bias since these companies know that you're doing this? Is there some attempt to kind of de-anonymize your process to kind of figure out who are the people that are actually ordering these or some other kind of indicators, and how has that affected your process of ensuring your integrity?
Great question. Two quick answers to that question. One is that it's actually to the benefit of our clients that they don't know, that they want to keep it anonymous. So they actually work with us to help us ensure that we don't set off any triggers at their company because they're the ones actually paying us for the data. They want the data to be objective. So they actually help us maintain anonymous, which is kind of sort of may seem weird. Second of all, we're actually working with Harvard Business School. We license our data to a team of researchers there to actually try to uncover. Once we actually told the market, we were measuring a lot of these companies before we told anybody and before we told the companies. And so what we're trying to uncover is whether or not just the presence of us existing puts pressure on these companies. I mean, look what's happening with Google. I mean, the data is now out there to help people make better decisions. And so what our hope is that at the end of the day, if we succeed as StellaService as a business, we're going to influence businesses to allocate more and more dollars towards service, towards the customer experience, because we're forcing a playing field. And so we hope that we'll be able to prove that just because we exist, even if they don't work with us, these companies are getting better. And we've got a point in time where we can see the before and the after as a control group.
Rick Zullo, you talked a lot about the objectivity and anonymity that you guys have in your process, but the reality is most customers, or not all customers, are first-time customers. And now that there's things like loyalty frameworks and CRMs and social graphs that people can use to better segment or prioritize the way that they interact with customers, how are you guys going to treat that, and how are you thinking about those type of issues?
Good question. We do think about this a lot. I think a lot of the questions that are the blocking and tackling questions that companies really care about are the low-hanging fruit, which is where's my order, where's the thing, can you tell me the difference between product A and product B? So really as you get much farther down the funnel and people are trying to hyper-segment and customize and personalize the experience, we're not really measuring that quite yet. For brands like Walmart and Toys R Us and Zappos, we're really trying to help them make sure that they're doing everything at the top of the funnel the right way. And our shoppers do end up purchasing from these companies more than once, but it's just not enough times that it would trigger an event. So in some cases, they actually are repeat customers. It's a good question.
Good. That's unfortunately all the time we have.
Okay. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.